Now let us talk about fractional part of x. And you must be familiar about the graph of fractional part of x, dear students. Let me draw that once again. See here. So this is -1. The first one is +1, right? So this is +1 and this is -1. Between 0 and 1, fractional part of x is x. Between 1 and 2, it is x minus 1. Between 2 and 3, it is x minus 2. Between -1 and 0, it is x plus 1. Between -2 and -1, it is x plus 2, and so on it continues. If you observe carefully, no doubt, fractional part of x is a periodic function. Is that correct? It is a periodic function. Do you agree with me? Right? With period is equal to 1. With period is equal to 1. Right? So it is not continuous. Where it is not continuous? At x is equal to z. Whenever x is z, the function is not continuous. It is evident from the graph. And of course, it is not differentiable at x is equal to z. Is it correct? And moreover, domain is x belongs to set of real numbers. Range, you can see, dear students, it starts from 0, goes up to 1. So y belongs to 0 to 1. However, 0 is in close bracket, 1 is in open bracket, because fractional part of x is never equal to 1. Never it is a integer also. It is always a number which lies between 0 and 1, including 0 and excluding 1. Right? It is definitely a many-one function. It is evident from the graph. A line drawn parallel to x-axis meets the graph at more than one point. So whether it is even or odd function, it is neither an even function nor an odd function, because it is neither even nor odd, because you can directly see here the function is neither symmetrical about x-axis nor anti-symmetric about x-axis. Right? So fractional part of x is always a fraction. Fractional part of x is a fraction. Fraction means proper fraction. It is a proper fraction, right? Proper fraction. That means to say it lies between 0 and 1, of course, excluding 1 always, right? Dear students, this is about fractional part of x, right? I hope, dear students, you have understood many concepts. You have understood continuity, differentiability, writing domain, writing range, and talking whether the function is one or many-one. So we have not discussed all functions. If I start discussing all the functions, maybe I will need another 10 days to complete all. But however, with the little time available, we have finished enough functions for our discussion. Dear students, the entire chapter called function is based on few basics. Whether the function is one, many-one, whether it is into, onto, bijective, surjective, and we talk about domain, range, codomain and all. Let us try to understand one by one. Let A to be a function. Then A, the set A is called as domain of the function, right? Set A is called as domain, right? Then what is set B? Is it called as range or codomain? Set B is called as codomain. Then what is range, dear students? Range is actually a subset of codomain. Of course, I will be giving an example for how exactly the range is different from codomain, right? And however, let us take a simple example, dear students. Y is equal to sin x from R to R, right? So, y is equal to sin x. So, here the values of x are called as domain. X belongs to set of real numbers. This is domain, right? And y belongs to -1 to +1. This is a range. How different range from codomain? Suppose if it is defined as set A to be R to R, right? So then codomain is R, but however range is -1 to +1. I think you have understood the difference. Right? Anyway, I will be giving a different example for this. Before that, please make a note of this. Now, let us discuss few of the properties of domain. For example, suppose you are asked to find out what is domain of two functions f of x plus g of x. You know the domain of f of x, you know the domain of g of x, and how to find out domain of f of x plus g of x. Domain of f of x plus g of x is f of x domain intersection of g of x domain. What is domain of f of x into g of x? It is just intersection of domain of f of x and domain of g of x. What is domain of the definition of the function f of x divided by g of x? That is domain of f of x intersection domain of g of x except g of x equal to 0. That means to say g of x should not be equal to 0. With this knowledge, let us discuss a few of the concepts, and I am trying to introduce a few of the problems parallel to that. Let us talk about a few of the properties and our rules of domain of function. Domain of f of x plus g of x is domain of f of x intersection g of x. Let us use this property and discuss a problem. See, domain of f of x plus g of x is domain of f of x intersection domain of g of x. So, intersection of both the sets. Now, let us discuss a problem based on this. What is domain of sine inverse of x and root x? Dear students, sine inverse of x exists if and only if x lies between -1 and +1. Is that correct? See, this is the graph of sine inverse of x. This is y-axis, right? And this is x-axis. It exists between -1 and +1. Therefore, sine inverse of x exists if and only if x belongs to -1 to +1, of course including both. That is the first part. Whereas root x exists if and only if x belongs to 0 to infinity. Now, actual domain of sine inverse of x plus g root x, right? Now, domain of sine inverse of x plus root x is intersection of these two. You can see, dear students, this is starting from minus 1 up to plus 1, whereas this is starting from 0 up to infinity, right? So, if you observe carefully, let us write both on the number line, right? So, the first one is from minus 1 to plus 1, including both, whereas the second one, you can see here, it starts from 0, goes up to infinity. So, this is the first part, minus 1 to plus 1, and the second part is 0 to infinity. So, what is intersection? You can see this is the intersection. It starts with 0, ends at 1. Is that correct? So, it is 0, 1. So, domain of sine inverse of x plus root x is 0, 1, including 0 and including 1. Therefore, option C is correct, right? So, how to define domain of two functions, if they are, whether it is addition or subtraction, f of x plus g of x, or f of x minus g of x, or f of x plus g of x plus h of x, even in case of all the three also. So, you should take intersection of domain of f of x, domain of g of x, and domain of h of x. I hope you have understood this.
ಡಿಯರ್ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ಸ್, ನೀವು ದಿವಿಗೆ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಚಾನಲ್ಗೆ ಸಬ್ಸ್ಕ್ರೈಬ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ಸ್ಗೂ ಹೇಳಿ, ಇದೇ ಥರ ನೂರಾರು ವೀಡಿಯೋಸನ್ನು ಫ್ರೀಯಾಗಿ ನೋಡಿ.